And when the time came for their purification according to the law of Moses, they brought him up to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. As it is written in the law of the Lord, every male who first opens the womb shall be called holy to the Lord. And to offer a sacrifice according to what is said in the law of the Lord, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. Now there was a man in Jerusalem whose name was Simeon. And this man was righteous and devout, waiting for the consolation of Israel. And the Holy Spirit was upon him. And it had been revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that he would not see death before he had seen the Lord's Christ. And he came in the Spirit into the temple, and when the parents brought in the child Jesus to do for him according to the custom of the law, he took him up in his arms and blessed God and said, Lord, now you are letting your servant depart in peace according to your word. For my eyes have seen your salvation, that you have prepared in the presence of all peoples, a light for the revelation to the Gentiles and for the glory of your people Israel. And his father and mother marveled at what was said about him. And Simeon blessed them and said to Mary his mother, Behold, this child is appointed for the fall and rising of many in Israel, and a sign that will be opposed, and a sword will pierce your own soul too, so that the thoughts of many hearts will be revealed. And there was a prophetess, Anna, the daughter of Phanuel, of the tribe of Asher. She was advanced in years, having lived with her husband 7 years from when she was a virgin, and then as a widow until she was 84. She did not depart from the temple, worshiping and fasting and prayer night and day. And coming up at that very hour, she began to give thanks to God and speak of him to all who are waiting for the redemption of Israel. This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. I want to set before you the wonder that we have spoken of, this marveling that Simeon speaks of, that Anna over Jesus, this absolute amazement. And it's so beyond things that we can ordinarily perceive with ourselves. This is really a spiritual matter, something that is not by sight, but is by faith. And the way that Paul speaks about it in our lesson, Eddie, we're going through the second lesson, so not the gospel text, but the epistle text, and so that'll be our focus. But the way that Paul speaks about that is there's this fullness of time. And so I'd like you to think about what is this fullness of time that causes you such wonder and amazement. And I know that we get physical glimpses of such things, things that we can see that gives us just a moment of maybe appreciation that might be used as an example for that deep, deep spiritual truth of God's fullness, of his plan. Now, you all go through things, though, that aren't very wonderful. You've got pains and hurts and sorrows and griefs. You've got things that you see that don't cause you to just glow in amazement. You're not Pollyanna all the time, are you? But there are these things that break through in the midst of the hurts of the world that transform the way you see those hurts, that make you think about them differently and make you see them differently. Do that. The things God brings about, even out of the hurts and ills and evils of the world, the way that God can work that into his fullness should just blow you away. This word, the fullness of time that Paul speaks about in the lesson. To think of that word with that wonder and amazement of Simeon and Anna. So that when you behold Jesus, according to his word, just like they do, where it's the 2 or 3 gathered, wherever that promise hits you, there's so many of them. When that promise hits you and you say, Jesus is here. Here is the Messiah. That you're able then to respond with Simeon and Anna with that wonder and amazement and say, I see now this fullness of God's plan. That's so much more than I could have ever imagined. Oh, what does that look like? Well, the image we're given in the epistle text, in the second lesson, the Galatians text, is adoption. Adoption. So we're going to look at that first. Before we get to the adoption, we've got to realize that all of us come in a different context. I know you usually hear the word redeemed in the context of kidnapping, right? You're going to pay a ransom, and you think of a kidnapping. But the word redeemed doesn't only have to be a kidnapping. I was brought this to attention in studying that word, that it can be the context of a marketplace. Now, the word marketplace, you know that. But when is it that human beings are put on the marketplace? When is it that human beings are put up on the marketplace, and then here's the price set for them? Slavery, aren't we? Paul in Galatians speaks very much about slavery. And he says that our context, yours and mine, is just like we rehearse every single Sunday, that we have to do it again and again because our world tells it differently. And so every single Sunday, we bring it home in some way that we hope is powerful to you and connects and says, yes, I'm a sinner. That I'm the one who doesn't belong by my own flesh or ability in the family of God. So we call it confession and forgiveness, to acknowledge our sin. But the way Paul speaks about in Galatians is he says our starting spot is slaves, sold under sin. Now, if you want to talk about a harsh master, the law and sin and death, wow. You know who wields all of those powers? The law and sin and death? The devil. So you can have a picture in your mind of a really harsh and cruel master, can't you? So we're told in Galatians, the law, sin, and death, that we're under, in bondage to them. That's our starting spot. And then we're put up on the marketplace for sale. And here's the wonder. If you're picturing yourself without a defender in the world, and there you are on the marketplace, and now without any power in your own self, you're for sale to the powers of the world, and you know how harsh and cruel they are, and the bad things that you already know have happened to you, you can just know what's coming next. It's going to be even worse, right? Jesus redeems you at market. He pays the price, the market price, for the whole world by his innocent suffering and death. That's that word, redeemed. That suddenly, he's purchased you. He has bought you. You're not your own. No, still not your own. You still have a master, but who has bought you? Jesus has. Now, if you're thinking of the harshness of serving under the bondage of the law and sin and death versus serving under Jesus, that's a different master, isn't it? But it's even better. It's even better. But that's the starting spot that we gotta have firmly in mind to get to the wonder of this point. That we're adopted. That Jesus did that. He purchased us so that, you see, he didn't purchase us to just set you free on your own. He didn't give his life's blood so that you can do what you want to do with your life. He purchased his lifeblood. He gave that to purchase you so that you can live with him in his kingdom. So he didn't die to say, okay, now go do what you want to do. He gave himself and loves you and gives everything to you. And what do you think he's hoping is coming from you? Planning, I should say. Planning is coming back from you. Love, joy, a fullness of a moment of being adopted. What does it being adopted look like? I know you've seen this one, so we're going to play the broader thing to give you a context that what you see often in the world and know about, there's Christians who are living in this adoption, that they know that this is what they're about and this is what they commit their lives to. Here's what it looks like.
Really, the hardest part about the whole process was this looming. Really, the hardest part about the whole process was this looming uncertainty that you feel, about our family, the future of the kids. And this is really true no matter what your circumstances are. We have no control, but we tend to run towards things that make us feel safe and secure. And throughout this process, we just knew that we weren't in control and that we had to really rely on God and trust in Him. And
yeah, it was, just realizing we had to hold the kids with an open hand. And really that's any parent, but in foster care it's just so, it's so clear, that we are not in control, and having to give them up, to God and their futures. It was a daily, sometimes hourly, minutely battle to, submit to Him and His will.
Yeah. In hindsight, it was really hard. But you can see God's plan weaving throughout the whole thing. And really, in those moments when we're just feeling down, feeling discouraged, God is showing how close to us He really is. And so we are so much better off having that experience with Him and experiencing this, knowing that He loves us, He loves these kids, and He's got it.
Some of the hard parts about foster care was that I was sad that I wasn't with my birth mom, and that I was just unsafe there. I didn't know Jesus when I was with my birth mom.
I see the tears sitting on your cheeks. I know you're tired.
When we signed up for foster care, we knew that our first placement could take a while. You never really know, how long each placement is going to last. But as 1 year became 2 and 2 years became 3, with all the ups and downs, it was more than we realized we signed up for.
When it reached around year 2.5, I remember, just being so discouraged and praying the most desperate prayer of my life, to the Lord, just that I couldn't take it anymore, that, I needed to know, the kids needed to know what was going to happen.
The weight of the world is getting too heavy. Give it to Jesus. His arms are steady.
God, in His mercy, answered that prayer of desperation. A little while later, we found out that the mediation was successful and that we were going to be able to adopt all 3 kids. And that was the biggest relief.
Yeah, I remember looking at our kids and our family through an entirely different lens and thinking, we're going to get to, Lord willing, watch our kids grow up.
We are so ecstatic, feeling that we're going to get to tell Ivy this news. This is something that she has been praying for and hoping for as well, and God has answered her prayers.
All right, well, there's one more gift.
We have one more gift.
It's not for Grammy, but it's another gift. Why don't you carefully open it up and look at it. I want you to read it. Read it out loud.
My new name will be Ivy Abigail Zazorka.
Let's flip it over.
I'm going to be adopted.
We love you, sweetie. We'll always be your parents.
I love you so much.
We love you, sweetheart.
I was feeling nervous, extremely nervous, because I've never been into court before, and I've never met a judge, and there's just so much pressure for me. I was like, oh no, are they gonna cancel it at the last moment and I won't be adopted? I was just relieved that it was all over. They can't take us away now.
You are mending the broken-hearted. You are making all things new. And you're rebuilding out of the ruins a city of hope with the ones you love. Adoption is our heritage.
There were so many times throughout the process that I wondered, God, are you here? Do you hear my prayers? Are you listening? Do you love us? Do you love these kids? And I mean, those questions now seem so crazy because...
Yeah, I mean, it's so clear he was orchestrating everything just over those 3 years, but when we were in college, when we were 20 years old, our first daughter, Ivy, was born. It just took us, 7 years later to meet her, and then, a couple years after that till we could adopt her.
Yeah, I never would have imagined in college that this would be the path that God would lead me down. I could have never seen it coming. But I'm so glad that he did.
So I have some health problems that started 12 years ago, and Ivy has diabetes. And the one night she and I were just having a talk, and I was telling her that because of Crohn's, I with complications wasn't able to have biological children, but because of that led us on the path to adoption, which led us on the path to fostering. And she turned to me with this said, Mom, God gave you Crohn's because he knew you needed to be my mom. And it was just the most, healing, incredible thing, because I knew that she was so right, that we can't always see what God is working out. It took 12 years for me to see how perfect his plan.
You have been seeing the little piece of that on the commercials, but that for sure is going to be part of, I know, Super Bowl advertising. And you can see how many people will be viewing little Ivy's adoption moment. I can't ever see it without tearing up, so I've got tissue if there's any who need it right here. You're chosen. You're chosen just like that. The word for adoption is chosen. You're chosen. You are. You belong to God's family. That's you. And that moment when you realize it, when you know it, now the adoption is there already, whether Ivy knows it or not, right? But think how badly the folks wanted to tell her. And then when she knew it, and then she was still a little worried when the judgment day yourself. But you see what happens there. Well, maybe the way to put it really clear to you is here's the word for judgment day, heir, the legal heir. That's you. You're not just chosen. Christ hasn't just saved you from the rulers of the world. He's chosen you, and then look what he's done. He has made you an heir, a legal heir. The judge has said, you now get everything that belongs to Jesus Christ, the Messiah. It's now yours. His kingdom, the love that he has from the Father, it's all yours. So you saw Paige and Daniel. You heard a little of their Christian expression of faith. You might not voice it the same way, but it is for sure that God worked good, real good for them through all the things in their life to bring about his fullness of time for them. Now, the birth of Jesus for the saving of the world is even more. So think of the joy and the delight in you in the world, that we are remembrance of the gift, and not just then for Ivy, but for her little brother Kai and her little sister Lita, and that all of them are part of that special family. Well, you've seen now what adoption is. One of our great theologians of this century has said, you Christians will only understand grace and the power of the gospel insofar as you understand adoption. That's worth thinking about. And what a gift you have been given. You belong. He's chosen you. And you're not alone. Paige had her brother and sister gathered, and look around. You've got brothers and sisters, more than you ever dreamed of, all over this world. And even more in that great communion of saints. Amen.